I get a little ring in my ear like a doorbell, which says we're recording. Welcome to the lockdown sessions. It always sounds a bit funny being formal. Steph Tranter, executive coach, really specializing in emotional resilience and helping people when they've got stuck, and how do they move on from that sort of stickiness factor when they're not quite sure what that leap of faith is going to look like for them. And Steph, you've agreed to join this session. So first of all, thank you. And I'm sure, based on the fact we've already been chatting for probably the last 6 hours, it feels like, we could go on forever. This is just going to be part one. And every opening question that I throw out on these lockdown sessions is, what have you been learning and observing during this period, which has forced all of us to kind of reevaluate the way we look at the world? And as a coach in the topics that you specialize in, I'm really keen to understand, what have you noticed? What are you seeing as maybe some themes or trends that could help others?
Yeah, so I've there's actually been quite a lot of learnings personally, professionally, on so many levels. But I think one of the key things, whether I speak to friends, whether I speak to clients, whether I speak to just, as I was saying before, random people on LinkedIn that I might have just connected with, one of the main things that seems to come up is most people, not everybody, I appreciate that this isn't true for everybody, but most people's worlds have slowed down. They've changed. And that slowing down, or even just changing, whether that's because they're not commuting anymore, whether that's because things are just slightly different in the way slightly different, very different in the way they work, whether they've been, the extreme versions of made redundant or furloughed, whatever seems to have happened, they've slowed down. And this slowing down has made them a bit more reflective and thoughtful, maybe even challenge some of their thoughts around what they thought they could do or how they thought they could work. It's really thrown lots of things up in the air. Again, whether it's slowed down or not, actually, it's thrown everything up in the air, which has made people question, well, how am I doing life? How can I do life? And how do I want to do life? And I think because that's made you question things and shown in a lot of cases that you can do life differently. We were just talking earlier about running workshops and how some people's work has just completely dried up because now they've only really said it can only work if we're face to face, but the others that have worked are when we've embraced Zoom and seen how that can work. So actually we've been challenged on the way we do things. And I think that constant challenge in the way we do things, the way we think we could only do things. I've got a friend who works full-time, is also a mum of a 3-year-old. And she always thought, there's no way I can work from home. There's no way I can work from home. There's no way I could do this. I've got to be going out. And she's actually found the joy in spending more time with her 3-year-old and how important that's been, but equally that she can work from home. And that's actually opened up bigger questions for her around, well, what does that mean about what I do for work in the future? Right. And I think, so I suppose it brings up that question of, okay, so we're sort of 3 months into lockdown. So the world is starting to open up a little bit more. We're now thinking, okay, we're kind of going back to work. Some people more than others. Some people may have never stopped working, but there is a collective kind of, what do I want to go back to? What do I want to go back to? And this reflective time around, well, am I happy? Actually, I found new things that have made me happy, or I found new ways of doing things that I didn't think I could. And I think for me, it's that question of, what do I want to go back to? What do I want my work to be? How do I want to work? What's the way in which I want to work? How do I want to organize my life around the important things? What is important to me? So that was a lot there. Sorry, just chuckling.
No, but the last thing you say there is really important. I think that, what is important. I remember at the beginning of this whole process, I was seeing a lot of social media, which I found a little irritating actually, about how everyone's got a book inside them. Learn a language. This is your chance to learn a musical instrument and do grade 8. My mum she's 75, 76. she is translating the Iliad right now from Latin to English. That's what she's decided to do. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, hang on a minute. For me, just keeping the business going and getting through the next 3 or 4 months would be a real success. I don't have a book inside me. I don't want to learn a new musical instrument. And does that mean somehow I'm not successful, or I haven't used this time well? And maybe the question you just said there, that last thing of the questions about what makes me happy and what is important to me and what do I want to go back to, those 3 questions, if you can find yourself thinking about those things because you've got the time, whether it's because it's slowed down or whether it's because what feels like real life has been paused as we've been put into this confined situation, maybe that's the benchmark of what can help people get through this, is to start thinking about, I've actually got the time to think about the important things. You know, no one lies on their deathbed and says, oh, Steph, I wish I'd have spent more time at work.
I don't think I want to be at everybody's deathbed, though, to be honest.
Well, that's true. But the ones I've have never said that to me. You know, they've tried to impart to me that the important things are the people I love and doing things that make me happy and linking what I'm passionate about maybe to what I'm talented at, and if I can find that mix. So I wonder, to your point, how do you help people start unpicking those questions? Because even when you were referencing it there were half a dozen questions that flew right out your mouth, one leading from the other. How do you make sense of those questions?
I think there's two things actually, just to say what you said there. Going back to your point about, did you say it was your mum who's converted the Iliad? Amazing. I studied the Iliad at college, and goodness, good on her. And you're just trying to keep the business going. I guess if there was another lesson, another thing I learned, and I think actually this relates to what you just asked me as well. No one person's experience of this whole episode, stuff that's going on is the same. No one person is experiencing the same thing, and very, very early on, you could hear lots of judgment or lots of, oh, I feel really bad because I'm not doing very much and I'm quite enjoying this time, or oh, I feel really annoyed because other people are not doing X, Y, or Z. There was a lot of judgment straight away. And actually what I kind of felt like I wanted to say to people is no one person is experiencing this the same way. To have any judgment about what anybody's doing or even what you're doing is actually quite harsh, or almost just unrealistic, or almost just, and I don't just mean from the level of let's just everybody be kind. It's almost like let's just understand we've all got very different circumstances in which we find ourselves. And however you're experiencing it, it's okay, and what that links to in terms of how do you even go about figuring out what you want to go and do and what's important to you. So in a lot of the work I do, you're absolutely right how you described what I do. People often come to me and I often help people. Quite often it's when they're just about to have their 50th birthday.
Right, okay.
And they'll go, I'm just about to turn 50 and I'm reevaluating my life. I'm like, I've been really successful. I've got this career that I probably fell into, if I'm honest. But I've been really successful, more successful than I ever thought I would be. I'm earning more money than I thought. I'm married. I've got this house. I've gone on these holidays. In all respects, I'm successful. If you want to define success like that. But I woke up the other day and went, I'm just not happy.
Right.
How have I got here? What do I do? Now I get people from different backgrounds and different reasons, but quite often it is that it's like I've done all the things I thought were going to make me happy and they didn't, or I've just fallen into these things. I didn't even know what was going to make me happy. And I think that when you talk about where do you even start? No one ever taught us. It's not. I guess first of all, don't be so hard on yourself if you've suddenly gone, I'm nearly 50 and I haven't, and I'm not happy. What a failure I am. No one taught us. You go back to school. Where on the syllabus, tell me, was, okay, Brad, let's figure out what's unique and special about you. Let's figure out what your natural strengths are. Let's figure out, what your passions are, where you thrive, what you're interested in. And then let's embrace that. and work out how we can help you do more of that. No, we didn't get that. We got a limited set of subjects that if you didn't like or weren't very good at, then you come out of school feeling like you failed, because, you know, there was limited. And if you didn't like working or studying in the way that they taught you at school, then, well, tough, you're obviously stupid, you know.
I don't know what you're saying about learning about 16th century Prussian history.
Yeah. And I'm not down on school. Don't get me wrong. I'm not down on that. I'm just saying we no one in our lives taught us to figure out who we really are, what our unique value is, how we add value to the world just by being ourselves, and therefore how do we go about going and getting it. And so I'm not surprised we fall into sensible jobs that pay, that, you know, we get this. Well, we get torn between wanting to be who we really are, not really knowing who that is, and then knowing we've got to earn money and have a career and do the sensible stuff. And so we kind of lose sight of who we are. So I guess, first of all, it's like, don't beat yourself up for where you've got to. But there are some things. I think there's kind of 3 core things that can help people figure out where to go next, or figure out what's important, or figure out, you know, where will I get my joy? Where are my passions? So I can go into those. I've been talking quite a lot. I just wondered if there was anything you wanted to say.
No, but I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, you're right. You know, I have a number of conversations with my nephew, and he was a high performer, high flyer at school, one of them, and very creative. And he would get frustrated that at the school he was at, public school, they never encouraged creative courses. Even though he did music as one of his A-levels, it was never perceived as a serious subject.
There's a hierarchy of subjects, absolutely. Yeah.
And then, you know, he ended up going to music college, although he would have been more than capable of sweeping his way through Cambridge. And he started at music college, Steph, and within a couple of months, he realized there was nothing these teachers could teach him. And he was starting to observe how they were teaching him. And he's well-read, well-educated, and he spoke to his parents and said, this isn't for me. I just want to compose music. And both his parents are graduates of the Royal Academy of Music. This is where he was. So he was following in their footsteps, where his grandmother had gone. Both of his grandparents had gone there, his grandmas, you know. And he dropped out. And everyone in the family was saying, oh, are you sure? And he was like, no, I want to do what I love. I don't want to learn about how to finger a piece of music. I want to learn how to inspire a group of people to want to play it. And we've been talking recently, and he's 21, 22, and he's finally starting to understand, much earlier than most of us, that his purpose on this earth, what is his purpose? He's been grappling with it for ages, but he's come up with a beautiful phrase, actually. He said, his purpose is he wants to inspire hope through creativity.
Nice.
Right? It's beautiful. He's 21. And I'm wondering, as I'm listening to you, is what you're saying, that for most of us, we don't go through school with people trying to tap into what our purpose is. What's the impact of our contribution going to be? What is it that makes me value myself when I look in the mirror? Is it having a good job with a good house and a mortgage and a car and all these other things? When actually, we should be asking ourselves the question, what do you love doing? So when you're dealing with people who are saying to you, Steph, I'm stuck. I'm about to be 50. By the way, I am too. So I'll be booking my first session with you in a couple of weeks' time. Where do you go with that first question? Because even when you say it out loud, I'm thinking, do people even know how to answer that? What value do I bring? What am I passionate about? I mean, do they know? How do you get people to touch the answers to something that seems almost esoteric when you say it?
Yeah, and it's a really good question, and that's often a question people go, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I don't know. And my challenge back is that it's just because you haven't spent productive, focused, targeted thinking time about it. And you say, how do you help people tap into that? Sometimes it's just about giving them the time and actually asking the question and exploring that. I mean, sometimes it's just as simple as that. But I obviously, Brad, have tools.
Yeah, let's share some
that help people do. So I suppose there's a number of things, and I think, you know, you asked a number of questions. How do you help people figure out what their uniqueness is and what makes them who they are? And then secondly, how do you help them see the value that they add through using those things? And I think, so you're breaking it down like that. So first of all, I think it's just about spending time and giving yourself permission to do that, because there's a whole heap of things that stop that. I mean, the amount of times, and you must have this, amount of times when I've been coaching people, they've gone, God, this feels really self-indulgent, you know, or God, I feel like I'm in therapy here, just because we're talking about themselves. So right off, you've got this belief that to talk about myself is, one, selfish and self-indulgent, and two, it means that there must be something wrong with me because we're talking about me and my personality and my emotions. So we're in therapy. So, you know, you kind of have, sometimes it's just as simple as spend some thinking time about it, really thinking about it. But there's some things that can help. I mean, I use some great tools that help people identify their natural strengths, the things that we take for granted, the things that come naturally to us that we don't realize. There's a great tool called Strength Scope that's just fabulous for that, where you find out, and none of it is often a surprise when people get their strengths back, but what they do kind of go is they don't realize the impact they make and how, because they take them for granted. So there's some tools like that, self-awareness tools, but from a strengths perspective, not from a where are you really rubbish and let's focus on the rubbish bits, let's focus on what makes you you. So sometimes it's very much about also challenging the focus of the conversation, because most of the time when we talk about development, we talk about the things that I'm watching my words because I'm bound to swear any minute. But
I've got the dump button on, on pause here.
We focus on the things that we're really crap at, right? When we do development, we've all, again, going back to school, we're taught to be rounded. We're taught to focus on the grades that we didn't do very well in, so make them better rather than go to the ones that we did really well in and how do we do more of them. So I'm really conscious that I make sure my conversations with people are not about trying to make them rounded. It's not about focusing on where they're rubbish at. I don't need to help them with that. They've been working on that their whole lives, you know. It's about I've forgotten what the word is, but it's just about changing your mindset around where we focus and helping them go, okay, let's focus on your strengths. It's not about ignoring weaknesses. It's not about like living in a happy, clappy, fluffy world of everything's wonderful and being falsely positive. It's just readdressing the balance between where the focus is. So sometimes it's about a tool, sometimes it's about really focusing on that. But I also think it's about asking others as well already. I've got this lovely exercise I get people to do, which is just ask, instead of going out and getting, oh my God, I was going to swear again then, really self-editing. Instead of going out and getting 360 feedback from people, which is, sorry, I'm going to say, it's a ball ache to do quite often. It's designed, there's loads of stuff for people to fill in. You know, just ask a really simple question to people. What 2 or 3 qualities do I do that I have that you really value? What do you value?
I ran this exercise with my nephew the other day. I loved it when I saw you post on it. So I shared it with him instantly.
Ah, lovely.
And he said, I'll tell you, actually, I can tell you exactly what he said.
Yeah.
Because he thoroughly enjoyed it. He actually asked me if I wanted to be the first person to respond to it. So he said, what was his response? I absolutely love this, bold capital. Having struggled with the first 2 presumptions for years, I feel very strongly that it's the third which continues to bother me and that I can work on. Putting fear and worry aside, I'm going to try this exercise over the coming days. Wonder if you'd be happy to be the first to answer these 3 questions for me, please.
Fab.
So I did, and I sent him an image of him with my first Labrador as a picture that defines him because he looked so happy. Yeah. With also another picture of a little bendy person with the world on his shoulders, because that's also him. Yeah. And I sent him a YouTube clip of the Beatles singing Revolution. Yeah. Because that's what he's doing. He's going to revolutionize the world. And it's interesting because I think what you're doing with those questions, I want you to share them a bit, is you're really giving people a structured approach of how to look in the mirror.
Yeah. Ah, it's a lovely way to describe it. Yeah. No, it really is. And I think it's, and then none of it's rocket science, you know.
Right.
I'm not just suddenly given these weird and wonderful ways of doing it. I'm not trying to go and get loads of information out. I'm just saying, give yourself time and permission to focus on this. And other people often see our value more than we do, because quite often the bits that we offer come naturally to us, and therefore we take them for granted and we don't notice them. And actually it helps for somebody else to point them out, because again, I think there's a value we tend to collectively have, that it's not valuable if it's not hard work. So if it was easy for me, then surely that can't be valuable, you know, or we're just not aware of it.
There's something that you say there that really lands with me, which is this idea of how we can reframe how we look at ourselves a little bit. And actually, maybe what I'm hearing you say is, don't worry about your weaker areas. Actually, how do you leverage your strengths to mitigate those weaker areas?
Yeah.
And I wonder, you know, I grew up in a world of sport at school. I was lucky enough to be sort of okay at a number of sports and sort of play to a level. And because I lived in the world of sport, we were always taught this idea from our coaches about leveraging your strength. So I wasn't very good with my left foot. So I wasn't made to kick a ball against the wall with my left foot for hours a day. I was just made to be so good with my right foot that I didn't need my left foot. And I wasn't tall, so I was never going to suddenly grow to be 6'4". So what could I do? I could run fast with a low center of gravity. So get really good at that. And I think people in sport often have that extra edge in their upbringing that maybe makes that reflection easier. I wonder whether we could learn so much more from sport with younger people to help them start thinking about these quite powerful questions of actually asking somebody to give you feedback. Because even that's quite challenging for some, right? What do you think of me? What three qualities do you feel I bring to the table?
And we don't do that for two reasons. One is because whenever we use the bloody word feedback, everyone gets a shiver down their spine. They're like, oh my God, they're going to tell me how crap I am. You know, I regularly do feedback sessions around Strength Scope. The tool is called Strength Scope. I position it as, this is what you're great at. This is what you love to do. This is what comes naturally to you. First thing people say to me, if they haven't done it for a while, I was really worried about what people were going to say and how rubbish they're going to say. You know, it's about your strengths, even then.
Oh, but Steph, it is.
That's where we naturally go. So of course we don't ask. We don't, because we don't want to, you know. And I suppose, okay, if we get back to our humanness, as humans, we have a fundamental need to want to fit in, and we don't want to be different. And quite often, I mean, that's coming into a different territory in terms of what stops us leaping, what stops us making the change. We want to fit in. We don't want to do anything that's going to make us be rejected. But that's one of the reasons why we don't get feedback. But also one of the reasons why we don't want to be showing that we're standing out. So I don't really want to ask you what's great about me either. That feels a little bit, you know, that's up myself, isn't it? So we almost have, it's almost like, again, and going back to that word about permission, giving yourself permission to kind of look at what's good about you. And it's not about bragging. It's not about saying how amazing you are. It's just about saying, well, let's just be a bit analytical and practical about, well, where am I strong? Where am I good? What do I love? And more about what gives me energy rather than maybe what I'm good at. What do I love to do? What gives me energy? What am I passionate about? And it's not just about what we do. And I think this sort of tips a little bit into the resilience work I do, which is, again, it's knowing. See, when you're trying to figure out who you are as an individual and what makes you different, it's really counter to what you want to do as a human being, which is to fit in. You know, because if I find out what's unique about me, will people still love me? Will people still accept me? Will still, you know, I think there's something there in actually, I'm a bit scared to stand out as an individual, because what if I don't fit in? And fitting in and you know, this whole thing recently is about coming together and working together and being together and supporting each other together. And there's absolute comfort, reassurance, and survival in that, you know, absolutely. So you're always in this conflict between, you know, who am I and what am I about, and also how do I be me in a society of other people and make that okay. And part of that, linked to that, I'm conscious we're probably coming to the end of our time. Maybe we should have done 10 parts. I don't know, so much to do that. I'll shut up in a minute. But I think there's a really important part, and it actually came out of a conversation I was having this morning with somebody who I was doing a strength scope thing with. And that's really articulate of me, a strength scope thing, feedback session. And we started talking about, it's not just about doing the work that you love or comes naturally to you, it's finding the environment in which you thrive. And I think that's another really important thing that people have been thinking about and noticing in lockdown is, what environments do I need to thrive? And I don't mean to be really poncy around using the word thrive, but I you know, it's what do I personally individually need? And it doesn't have to be, I think you and I joke about, you know, we've chosen to self-isolate, you know, we've self-isolated by choice most of our life, you know, because there's something about, we get energized by our own energy, our own selves. Other people get really energized by being around lots of other people.
Right.
Neither is right, neither is wrong. It's just about knowing what you need. And we, again, for the reasons I've sort of stated before, I don't think we fully always spend time thinking about what environment I need to help me grow. We just think that we're being wrong or not hard enough or good enough, or
it goes back to your word, Steph, around permission again, because the more I listen to you, the more I think, wow, we've really disenabled ourselves in a cultural way in how we work. Because we kind of force this, you know, I appreciate as well that there are bills to pay and people have mortgages or rent and they've got kids, maybe there's school, there's clothes and food to buy. So clearly I can't just do what I love, because if it doesn't pay me anything, it's going to be a very quick road to emptiness. So it needs, must, etc. But if I'm at a point where I'm asking the question, what am I going back to? What am I wanting for myself? If I can't articulate what I really love to do, if I can't articulate the purpose of what I'm trying to achieve, then the likelihood is that I'll remain stuck. You remind me of a friend when you're talking from 20 years ago. We'll call him person A. And he hated his job. He worked in an accountancy firm. And Steph, every single Friday, we would hang out together for a beer and a movie, and he would complain about his boss. And for 20 years, even though now he's a senior partner on a 6 to 7 figure salary, he complains about his boss and hates his job. And now he's got 3 kids, all in fee-paying schools, so he can't just give up. And when I say to him, what would you really like to do? He'd like to buy a camper van and travel around the coast of this country. And I say to him, why don't you take a year off and do it? Well, I've got to wait for the kids to, you know, get to... I said, listen, if you wait for everything, you'll be too old to do it. What are you going to do? And he goes, well, you know, it's not so bad. And he's almost forgiving himself for feeling that way. And he doesn't mean to, because actually he's had that nagging feeling for 20 years. Now, he's very talented at what he does, but he is not passionate. And I'm wondering, as I'm listening to you, how many people are we meeting on a regular basis that are really talented, but not passionate? And it's that passion that brings the real happiness in purpose, because it's what I want. It's, you know, you use strength scope. A lot of the time at CGG, we'll use Edgar Schein's career anchors to help people start off. And I've had people come back to me years later saying, listen, I redid career anchors. Can't believe it was the same as it was. It was screaming at me 5 years ago. I've finally gone into business for myself. Autonomy was like #1. General manager was like #7. And they were a senior manager in a business hating their life. And it's like, if only we could help everybody just confront that fear. And maybe this goes to one of the first words you used in your introduction. Maybe it's a fear of what they might find. Maybe it's a fear of letting go of what they think they should be doing. And maybe this is us coming full circle. So like the last question I'll pose to you, you've shown us how people can start thinking about themselves and take this kind of reflective look. What about how do they overcome or start to overcome and unpick the fear of what their answers might tell them? Or is that part two?
I think it's probably part two. But I think I could probably, it's such a massive word, fear. And there's so many things you just said there that I really want to speak to. So I kind of get, your friend you talked about, is good and talented at what he does, but isn't necessarily passionate. I think a lot of people fall into that because part of the worst part of the story of falling into what we do rather than being really clear what we want is often we're quite good at it, and so we get successful at it, and so we get stuck, and so that often is what happens. And also, I live in a real world, right? So people listening to this might be going, oh, this is all great, Steph and Brad, let's focus on what we're passionate about and what our purpose is. But I've got 3 kids, I've got a wife or a husband, I've got this, that, and the other. When do I have time for this? Well, I still, like you said, I've got to pay the bill. I live in the real world, right? So there's stuff we've got to do. But I think it's about small adjustments, and it's small. Actually, could life be a little bit better? Are there some things that are worth thinking about change? Am I almost like a review and reset almost, let's just review. Yeah. Am I doing the important things? Am I living life how I want to live? And therefore, what can I do to adjust that? And how do I think about this? And what do I do? So, and that's what I think the slowing down helps, because they've then got a chance. I don't think we put those little review points in our life to go, hang on a sec, let's just stop. What am I doing? How am I spending my time? Is it how I want to? So I'm not saying suddenly everybody has to make a massive leap into doing their camper van trip around the world or whatever. Yeah, I think it's about small things and just questioning ourselves and questioning the habits. With the fear stuff, what was your specific question? There's something there was a couple of things I really want to say about fear, and but I just remind me of your specific question.
Well, it's what happens when the answers that I get from those questions, I'm frightened of what the impact of those answers really mean for me.
What do you mean by that?
Because potentially I could find out that I do need to leave work. I do need to take risks. I do need to suddenly, maybe even my relationship isn't what I really want. I mean, there's a huge, I often say to clients when I'm talking to C-level guys about coaching, and I say, listen, it's great that you want to invest in these senior leaders, but be aware that by investing in them, they might end up walking. So how do we, and maybe this is, it's too big a topic to kind of, completely unpick now, but I'm interested in if people are frightened of the answers that are coming back, how can we maybe help people feel more comfortable with their own path, their own truth? Because when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, wow, what Steph's doing is she's helping people be really truthful with themselves. So how do we help people get comfortable with their own path? Because once they find their own path, that is the way they will go.
So I guess what you're saying is people might be afraid to answer these questions because it might tell them that what they've done up until now was not necessarily the right things, and therefore
it's not nurturing their soul.
They might have to make some changes, and they're afraid to see that. There's so much to say. I guess my first thing is that I guess it's very natural for that, but I suspect it probably won't be as bad as they think. And also what they find out, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to do anything about it, right?
No, that's true.
Just because you find stuff out, you then have a choice around what you do. And I suspect, you know, my first thing I said up front was, don't beat yourself up. It's not a surprise you've ended up where you've ended up. There's almost a little bit of, actually, if we wait, it's about holding a belief that everybody is doing the best they can with everything they've already got. What they, you know, you're doing the best you can with what you've got at any given moment. You're making the best decisions you can at any given moment with what you've got. And if you hold that belief for yourself and you hold it about other people, it's a much nicer way to interact with the world and with yourself. So I think there's something in that. But I also think that you don't have to do anything about it is one thing. But I also find that actually those fears dissipate really quickly as soon as they start going, oh, okay. Because usually we're not that far off. And if we are, sometimes actually it's just really liberating to get that stuff out. Sometimes it's just cathartic to get it out. And I was really struggling to answer your question because I keep saying, well, as soon as we start talking about it, that never seems to be an issue.
Right.
As soon as they get out, there never seems to be an issue. It's almost cathartic just to get it out. And often the things we're most afraid of are usually not the real things. They're not actually the things that I think there's a lot. I've just been doing a lot of work around fear with people and people's fear of failure, and what that means and what that looks like. Because quite often the fears are, I failed, or what if I fail? And then, but it's generally not about that. It's often about a belief we might have about ourselves, and then what that information might confirm about me. You know, so if I fail, what does that confirm about a belief I already have? So, you know, and we're often, it comes back to this need to fit, this need to be part of the world, this need to be accepted, this need to feel worthy and good enough. And actually, I suppose, you know, overcoming that fear of what might come out, it's almost like there might be a bit of pain, but it'll be worth it. Because in the end, you'll be really unraveling something truly transformational if you don't dig a little bit deeper. So in my coaching, I often tell people I'm a bit of a hybrid coach because I kind of merge the worlds of coaching and therapy. Because when you work with me, we'll work with you as a whole person, not just how do I be better in my career. It's never just about your career. When you're questioning things, it's never just about your career. And so I suppose I don't know the answer. There's loads of things. I suppose it's just about, for me, if you're working with someone, in most conversations in people's lives, sorry, I'm banging on. In most conversations in people's lives, you don't always find that you have the space to be truly truthful. And you all know this, Brad, as a coach. As a coach, you create a space where people go, I feel like it's okay to be truly truthful. The amount of times people have said to me, I've never told anybody this, Steph, not even my wife, not even my husband, not even my best friend. And I think if you're given that space, a non-judgmental, curious, unconditionally positive space with someone to explore this stuff, it doesn't feel that difficult, that hard.
No, and maybe that's
the
bit, and that's the bit that kind of brings us, I think, full circle in this chat, because we started out by thinking about actually what are the kind of things that we're all thinking about during this time, and we're ending with one of those things, which is actually it's not as bad as it seems if the space is safe. And for most of us, we're at home, which is our safe space for a lot of us. I know not everyone gets that, but most of us do. And I think also something else that you say that's really powerful is it's liberating to be honest. And the only way you can tap into your passions and your talents is to have a look and ask yourself, are they aligned? Because if they're aligned, it will never feel like work. That's my experience of tapping into my passion and talent. If I didn't love what I did, I would hate working. So being able to ask yourself these transformative questions and be prepared, I think you've used the phrase, give yourself permission a few times today, to give yourself permission to be honest, to be safe, to answer these questions. Maybe what we're doing is going to help others actually pose the question and be comfortable with the answers they throw back at themselves. What I'd love to do is to come back in about a month and pick up on this idea of the fear stuff and see if we can't unpick and unravel what happens when people are talking in that space and they actually do become a little bit more nervous about, so, okay, I know what those talents are, I know what the passions are, but now how do I make the next step? Yeah. Will you come back?
I'd love to, yes.
Next time we'll put an hour on the podcast review, so it gives us a bit more time to play with.
We knew though, didn't we? We knew.
A little bit. Brilliant. Steph, that was awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I thoroughly enjoyed it.